Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon, and I am back again, bringing you another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we basically finished up the kind of rote quests in the Shimmering Flats, where we killed off basilisks, and we killed scorpions, and got the turtles taken care of. The rest of them are going to start to more deal directly with the racing aspect between the gnomes and the goblins, and tons of traveling. So we'll kind of get that one going next time, and we'll see how far we can push it before the quests are beyond us. We've also been reading War of the Scaleborn, and in this book we have the backstory between the aspects and the primals, and we've started to see how this war is being waged sort of from like a sneaky planted agent sort of front before very much actual warfare has broken out. So stay a while and listen as we continue with Chapter 8 of War of the Scaleborn. Neltharion tapped his talons on the stone floor, annoyed. He stood in the throne room of the Obsidian Citadel with 3 of his flight leaders discussing the latest intelligence from the west. A sculpted map of northern Kalimdor stretched out before them, which the scalesmiths had carved from a massive piece of igneous rock. Dragon-shaped pawns stood in Valdrakken and Harrow's Deep, representing the aspects and incarnates' forces. The throne room overlooked the entirety of the Obsidian Citadel and the valleys beyond. Overhead, the clouds burned bright orange, reflecting the fires that roared in the Citadel's forges. Columns of thick, dark smoke twisted into the sky. The ring of hammers echoed off the sharp cliffs. Black dragons dived in and out of sight, busy with their own tasks. Neltharion took great pride in the bastion his flight had built. The Obsidian Citadel was the pinnacle of the dragon's fortifications, fusing imposing form with gainful function. Over 200 years, his flight had reinforced the mountains around the Citadel, turning it into a powerful bulwark against Harrow's Deep. They built grand forges, tunneled into the mountains to create vaults, and pioneered new weapons, armor, and defenses. Of the 5 dragonflights, it was the Black Dragonflight who pushed the martial prowess of the Broodlands forward. Today, however, those feelings were overshadowed by the news from the west. Agnion had just returned from several nights in Incarnate territory. As leader of the Shadow Scales, Agnion spent much of his time afield. Upon his return that morning, he added 2 more dragon pawns to Harrow's Deep, signaling another 100 dragons apiece. The growth of Iridikron's forces outpassed out of the aspects by a wide margin. Before long, they would outnumber the dragonflights 3-1. Iridikron was preparing for war. Oops. Sorry, guys.
The quakes are increasing in intensity and frequency, my aspect,
Agnion said to Neltharion.
And we still cannot prove with absolute certainty that Iridikron and the Primals are to blame for them. Nor can we stop them from affecting our territories.
Calcia gestured to the map with her talons.
As you know, my scalesmiths have worked with the Blue Dragonflight to place enchanted obelisks around the borders of the Broodlands, helping to absorb the worst of the quakes, she said, tapping the western border. It lit with bright fire under her touch. However, she continued, the increased frequency of the tremors has destabilized the magma chambers beneath the waking shores. If left unchecked, we fear it will have dire consequences for the entire region. I don't need to tell any of you what will happen if the caldera beneath us explodes, Agnion said.
Neltharion drummed his talons on the floor again, harder this time, sending hairline cracks into the stone beneath his feet. On the surface, the stone scaled appeared to be using the quakes to disrupt the aspect's progress in the Broodlands. Iridikron's goals were rarely so superficial. Despite Neltharion's wisdom and long acquaintance with the stone scaled, they had once been close to sharing the same interest in the bones of the earth. He could not guess the Incarnate's true aims. He had conjectures, assumptions, inferences. The Earth Warder shifted in his place, muscles aching from the weight of the world pressing in on him from all sides. He sensed the cracks that Iridikron broke into the continent, but the why continued to elude him. A whisper curled at the back of Neltharion's mind, sinuous as smoke.
You will fail,
it crooned.
You have not the strength, nor the shrewdness to stop the Scaleborn.
Stone scaled. Neltharion gave his head a little shake, but the whispers persisted.
He laughs at you from the depths. They all do. Even your fellow aspects mock you,
said a third.
They see you for the fool you are. Turn to our power,
instructed a fourth voice.
We will help you crush your enemies underfoot. Iridikron is nothing compared to me,
Neltharion said to the whispers, frustrated with their prattle. Even before he had become aspect of the Black Dragonflight, these whispers began to rise from the deep dark caverns in his mind. Over the years they had increased in intensity, making Neltharion question his own thoughts, his own actions. They were inescapable, omnipresent. Neltharion had not told another soul about them, not even Malygos, who had long been his closest confidant and friend.
Embrace us.
No! Half a growl escaped Neltharion's throat. Before his flight leaders could so much as lift a brow, he said,
Iridikron grows more brazen by the day, and yet Alexstrasza's peace edicts bind our talons. We must find a way to push back, my liege.
Vembrion, the embattled one-eyed seneschal of the Obsidian Citadel's guard, sighed as he looked over the map.
The incarnates draw more mature dragons by the day, and while our whelplings will soon outnumber theirs, it will be centuries before our armies can match their maturity, skill, and might. At this rate, we will be unable to hold the western border in the event of a direct attack. I know, my old friend,
Neltharion said, blowing a hot breath from his nostrils. With every passing day, the Incarnate's position grew stronger. Unlike Alexstrasza, Neltharion did not believe the Aspects would be able to make peace with the Incarnates. Tyr was gone. The rest of the Keepers were scattered or dead. Whatever threats arose, the Aspects would face them on their own. Far to the northwest, the stone scaled shaped the ground beneath their feet. Iridikron had warned the Aspects in their dragonflights of the consequences for entering his domain, and that included its skies. So the Black Dragonflight monitored Iridikron's work from afar, observing and recording the earth-rattling tremors that originated from Harrow's Deep. Varrock rallied primal dragons to the Incarnate side, while Raszageth was Raszageth. The Storm Eater loved nothing more than to sow discord and chaos wherever she went, and often harried the flight's patrols. Raszageth had already menaced her fair share of black and green dragons along the Broodland's western borders, and yet Alexstrasza cautioned them to stay any attempt at a counterattack. Raszageth wanted to incite a war, that much was clear. Neltharion respected Alexstrasza's convictions. Publicly, he made pretenses for peace, backing Alexstrasza and instructing his flight not to engage with the primals. Over the years, he had sent emissaries to Harrow's Deep at the Dragon Queen's behest. Each had been turned away, several had been beaten, one to the verge of death. Iridikron had killed Neltharion's spies, refused peace talks, and spread vicious rumors about the effects of order magic on dragonkind. He claimed the fights had kidnapped legions of Terrasek and forced order magic upon them, turning into subservient Draconid. It was a lie, of course, but many were quick to choose fear over truth. Iridikron would not be reasoned with. He would set all of Kalimdor aflame before he bowed to anyone, much less to those who served the Keepers. So quietly, Neltharion prepared for war, just as Iridikron was doing. He tapped his talons on the ground a third time.
Calcia, I think we can indeed push back. Develop an obelisk that senses the vibrations in the earth and emits an interfering wave of equal strength. The quakes must stop if we are to continue our work. We could do that,
Calcia said, pressing one of her 4-foot knuckles into her chin, thinking.
I will set to work on the prototypes myself. Good, Neltharion said. The question of our numbers is much more difficult to solve, however. It takes dragons far too long to reach adulthood. We have decades, not centuries. So we conscript the eldest drakes to fight, Vembrion said. Not against fully grown dragons, Neltharion replied. Elder drakes may serve on patrols and in support roles, perhaps, but they will not be able to hold their own in the skies. Can we not breed more Draconid? Egnion said. Draconid cannot fight in the skies. They possess only limited control of magic, Neltharion replied. If we want to disrupt the primals on the battlefield, we may need to create a new type of soldier entirely. Let me think on the solution.
He's thinking of Drakthir. A blaze of crimson caught Neltharion's eye. He looked up, surprised to see Alexstrasza landing on the terrace of the throne room. A second dragon alighted beside her, a blue-tinged primal dragon of ice. Vyranoth, Neltharion thought with a frown. Vyranoth had not been seen in the Broodlands for several years. What brought her to their territories now? Neltharion knew Vyranoth by reputation alone. The primal dragon had long been friends with Alexstrasza. However, the Shadow Scales had spotted her with Raszageth on more than one occasion. With conflict brewing on the horizon, a dragon of Vyranoth's stature could not stay neutral for long. Neltharion did not trust her to choose order.
Speak to no one of this,
Neltharion said to his flight leaders of their plan. The three black dragons nodded to their aspect, murmuring their assent. Agnion stretched his wing over the map, turning all the pawns on its surface into shadows.
Alexstrasza,
Neltharion said, forcing a smile as he strode toward the terrace.
What brings you to the Obsidian Citadel this day? A look at our forges for our friend Vyranoth, perhaps?
No, Neltharion, Alexstrasza said, her tone grim. The Dragon Queen flicked her tail back and forth, almost as if she were nervous. Nervousness was not a state in which Neltharion was accustomed to seeing Alexstrasza. I fear we bring distressing news. Vyranoth turned to him. A thin layer of frost grew under her feet and spread out across the floor.
Perhaps you can explain, Earthwarder. Explain what?
Neltharion asked, looking to Alexstrasza in confusion. His flight leaders fanned out behind him.
What has happened?
Alexstrasza swished her tail again, agitated. 2 nights ago, Vyranoth believed she saw an ordered dragon ravaging a local Terrasek village. The entire settlement was burned to the ground. Neltharion narrowed his eyes.
From which flight?
He asked through his teeth. The Dragon Queen sighed, giving him a fraught look.
Ah,
Neltharion replied.
I see.
I wanted to bring these allegations to you in private rather than to the seat of the aspects, Alexstrasza said. Do you know anything of this?
No,
he replied, and the word rumbled through his chest like cracking stone.
I have issued no such orders.
The Dragon Queen held his gaze for a full heartbeat, her golden eyes sharp, intelligent, questioning.
She thinks you a liar,
one of the whispers said.
A warmonger undermining her command.
Silence, Neltharion told them. Then he said,
You know I would not lie to you, Alexstrasza.
You already lie,
said the whispers, curled at the back of his mind.
She knows of the weapons you forge in the dark.
And what of your flight leaders? Alexstrasza asked, turning her attention to Agnion, Calcia, and Vambrion. Have you seen any such behaviors from your flight?
No, my queen,
Vambrion said, bowing his head.
The Black Dragonflight is ever loyal to your decrees.
Very well, Alexstrasza replied. Vyranoth, you will tell them what your friends witnessed at our borders. In the autumn, I took several drakes under my wing, Vyranoth said. During the last dark moons, one of them spotted an ordered black dragon burning a Terrasek village to the ground. They say the mortals have been attacked as well.
That cannot be, Agnion said, stepping forward. We would not attack innocents, especially unprovoked. If such a thing were happening, surely we would know about it. Agnion,
Neltharion said, his tone carrying a warning. Few knew of the Shadow Scales or their mission, and the Black Aspect intended to keep it that way. I flew the length of your western border, Vyranoth said, and found evidence of other sites that have been destroyed. Many Terrasek have fled west, telling stories of dragon fire and ruined villages. I have also found black scales at several sites. Vyranoth extended a collection of scales to the Earthwarder. Each one gleamed obsidian. Neltharion plucked a scale from her grasp, turning it this way and that, examining it from all angles. The scale belonged to an ordered dragon, of that there could be no doubt. Several of the scales were cracked or hatched with old claw marks. At least 2 looked dull, almost cloudy.
These scales did not come from a healthy dragon,
Neltharion said, passing the scale to Agnion.
The scale's size and shape are consistent, however. which leads me to believe they were taken or shed from the same creature. Due to the poor condition, I would guess this dragon is not living in the Broodlands or among the flights.
Alexstrasza frowned. Are there any black dragons missing from the Obsidian Citadel?
Perhaps, he said. Egnion, can I entrust you with this matter? Take the scales to the flight leaders. See if you can identify them.
Of course, my aspect. Egnion bobbed his head once, collected the scales, and hurried off. In the meantime, Vyranoth said, I will take you to the burned villages if you wish. Neltharion tilted his head, thinking. This situation smelled like a plot. If Vyranoth had chosen to side with the Incarnates, Iridikron could have sent her forth with this story, hoping to lure Alexstrasza from the safety of the Broodlands. In her infinite mercy, the Dragon Queen would rush across the borders, hoping to alleviate suffering and bring those responsible to justice. Thus exposed, it would be an ideal time to capture or kill the Dragon Queen. Iridikron had to know the dragonflights would not last without Alexstrasza. No creature could survive without its beating heart. However, Neltharion could not turn away from this situation. Trap or no, he needed to investigate Vyranoth's allegations.
I will go with you,
Neltharion said. Vyranoth dipped her head.
Very well, I shall be glad of your company.
I will go too, Alexstrasza said.
There is no need, my queen,
Neltharion said to Alexstrasza.
Allow me to go in your stead. I will be your eyes.
Better for Neltharion to go alone, especially if Vyranoth spoke true and the Black Dragonflight was responsible for a significant loss of life. If that was the case, he would want to control the perception and reputation of his flight. Alexstrasza shook her head.
If our flights are responsible for the suffering of others, I want to see the pain we have wrought with my own eyes.
Come then, Vyranoth said.
We should take wing before the hour grows late.
The mortal village had been reduced to nothing more than ash. Neltharion and Vyranoth were the first to arrive. The Dragon Queen had to let at least the Black Dragonflight take the vanguard. Neltharion circled the demolished village in the air. When Vambrion and his Obsidian Guard signaled that the area was secure, the Earth Warder banked and glided toward the ground. So Vyranoth had not been lying about the villages, which meant Neltharion had a different problem now. The Earth Warder landed amid the remains of a wrecked hut. Charred wood disintegrated under his feet, and a skull rolled into the space between his toes. Disgusted, he batted the remains away, kicking up a cloud of ash. The little village might have been charming once, at least by Terrasek standards. Tucked away beneath the protective wing of a mountain range, 15 huts had once stood on a pretty riverbank. Now the village was naught but blackened bones and burned corpses. The air smelled of charcoal, and the breeze rattled in what was left of the trees. Under Neltharion's feet, the earth still cried out in pain. Embers seethed inside the soil, burning deeper into the world's crust.
The Dragon Queen will blame you in your flight for this destruction, said a whisper. They will say you are unfit to lead.
Neltharion frowned, pushing the words from his mind. To his chagrin, the magic that called to him from the ground was ordered, and unmistakably from his flight, too. As his flight leaders landed around him, Neltharion exchanged a wary glance with Vambrion. Clearly, the old guard captain sensed it as well.
Say nothing,
Neltharion said under his breath.
Especially to the Dragon Queen. We will deal with this issue ourselves. Search the area and bring every scrap of evidence to my attention.
At once, my aspect,
Vambrion said, bowing.
I will inform the others.
Neltharion turned. Alexstrasza landed among the ruins, her features twisted in despair. She stirred her talons in the ash, exposing a set of skeletons clinging to one another. The Dragon Queen set her foot down and stared at the bones. Neltharion cared little for the burgeoning mortal races and even less for the Terrasek, yet the absolute wretchedness in Alexstrasza's bearing struck him to the core. The Dragon Queen closed her eyes and lowered her head. Her wings drooped. Several heartbeats passed in silence. A whisper curled in the back of his mind, beckoning to him.
She is too weak to lead,
the sibilant voice said, its vowels warped.
Why weren't you chosen? Are you even weaker than she? She will not have the strength to do what must be done.
There are many different kinds of strength,
Neltharion told the whispers in his head.
But only one triumphs in war, the whispers said.
Alexstrasza's voice tore Neltharion from his thoughts.
Terror permeates this place, she said. These creatures died screaming, and their cries still echo off the mountains that surround this place. It is unfathomable to think one of our kind could have done such a thing. And you say there are more places like this.
Alexstrasza lifted her head and looked to Vyranoth, who stood a few wingspans away from the queen.
By my count, at least 10,
Vyranoth replied, her gaze full of accusations.
So many, Alexstrasza lamented. Order magic is meant to call us ever higher, away from our baser instincts. This makes no sense. Perhaps order magic is not what you were promised,
Vyranoth replied. Alexstrasza gritted her teeth and said nothing. While the Dragon Queen mourned, Neltharion began investigating the village and its surrounding environs. Working with Vembrion, the Earth Warder dug in the ash, examined the burn patterns on the ground, and noted the depths of the embers burrowing deeper into the soil.
6 moons passed,
he mused to himself, rubbing some of the ash between his talons. The village had burned barely a clutch of moons ago. Neltharion frowned. He saw the what all around him, but he was once more missing the why. The Earth Warder walked to the sandy riverbank, gazing at the turbulent white water as it rushed over the rocks. Underfoot he sensed a strange yet familiar energy. Curious, Neltharion pressed his forefoot into the wet sand, asking it to part for him. The sand cracked and split, yawning open to reveal a thick, twisted branch. Thin fingers of lightning rose from the ground and sizzled around the damp bank. The scent of storms filled Neltharion's nostrils, fresh and sharp. With a frown, Neltharion reached into the earth and extracted the branch. No, not a branch, a fulgurite, a tube of vitrified sand. A fulgurite took the fury of lightning and trapped it in glass. At 2 talon lengths, this was one of the larger specimens Neltharion had seen in his life. Only a massive thunderbolt could have created such a thing. Neltharion hefted the fulgurite in his forefoot, thinking. Such an object may have been created by natural means. After all, it was not uncommon for powerful storms to strike along shorelines and roil among mountain ranges. But this particular artifact bristled with elemental magic. Not long ago, he had seen one of the Storm Eater's creations on the horizon, a great churning maelstrom that blotted out the sun. The residual magic in the fulgurite reminded Neltharion too keenly of Razageth's wild, unpredictable power. The Storm Eater was not clever enough to devise a plot like this. No, this was a Ridicron's doing. The Stone-Scaled must have found a way to coerce a black dragon into helping Razageth with her grim work. The Earth Warder turned his head, eyeing Vyranoth. The primal dragon stood with Alexstrasza on the other side of the clearing, examining a copse of burnt trees. Overhead, black dragons wheeled in the sky, ever vigilant. Did Vyranoth know of Razageth's involvement? The primal dragon was wise. If she had known about Razageth's part here, she likely would have come to the same conclusions as Neltharion had and confronted a Ridicron, not Alexstrasza. A Ridicron must have fed her a partial truth through a third party, knowing Vyranoth would go straight to the Dragon Queen. What was the Ridicron playing at? What sort of trap had he set for the aspects via mortals and Terrasect, no less? The fledgling mortal races were insignificant creatures. They should have been far below the notice of a dragon like Ridicron. Their lives burned bright for a moment, but that was all.
My aspect, Vembrion said, alighting beside Neltharion. The others are ready to move on.
Very well,
Neltharion replied, blinking his thoughts away. He offered the fulgurite to Vembrion.
Send one of your guards back to the Obsidian Citadel with this at once.
A fulgurite?
Vembrion said, taking the glassy tube from Neltharion. He sat back on his haunches, eyes widening as he turned the tube between his talons. Vembrion held it up to his snout and inhaled.
Was this made by Razageth's bolts?
Perhaps, Neltharion replied. Take it to Embrenion and tell them to look into the matter.
Titans be good, Vembrion breathed. Barian is our swiftest flyer. I will send him forth at once.
Do not be seen, Neltharion said. For now it is best the Dragon Queen does not know. She is too trusting, and we dare not risk Vyranoth learning what we know.
Understood,
Vembrion said. With worry pressing heavily on his mind, Neltharion took wing, rejoining Alexstrasza and Vyranoth in the skies. Every village they visited was nothing more than a dark smudge on the landscape. Alexstrasza stood amid the ruins of another settlement, her 7th that day. Charcoal dust coated her limbs to the knee and blackened her belly and tail. Her heart, too, felt as ashen as the grime on her scales. Ordered dragons had burned these villages. Her dragons. Neltharion had confirmed it, as had Malagos, who had been summoned to survey the arcane energies in the area. Alexstrasza called Nosdormu to their side too, hoping that the bronze aspect might peer into the past and help them understand what had happened in this place.
I am sorry, Nosdormu said to her, but the threads of time are delicate, and I am still mastering this art. I dare not risk meddling with the time ways until you have exhausted all other options. Very well, my friend, Alexstrasza had replied with a sigh. We will find another way.
This village was different from the others. This was a mortal settlement, not a Terrasec one, and the destruction was fresh. Embers burned low among the charcoal huts. Ash fluttered in the air like snowflakes. Half the trees surrounding the village had been reduced to blackened bones. Overhead the day faltered. The sun sank toward the horizon, stretching long, tarry shadows across the ground. Alexstrasza's nostrils were full of the stench of death, and her eyes watered from the debris in the air, but she could not look away. She counted every corpse, tallying up the dead. All told, their numbers were over 100. Adults, whelps, every death left another rent on her heart. As Dragon Queen, it was her responsibility to ensure the flights flew straight and true. As Lifebinder, she had a charge to safeguard all life on Azeroth. She found herself failing both duties. How could any dragon, ordered or not, kill so senselessly and without need? Alexstrasza's guards found tracks outside the settlement indicating several mortals had survived. The thought brought her little comfort. Even if some had survived, they'd lost their homes, their families too. Alexstrasza knew some things of the mortal condition. They had been continuing to explore visages, after all, and she knew they could not survive long without shelter, food, and clean water. She tried to find solace in watching her flights work together. Neltharion stood on the perimeter of the settlement with Malagos, examining traces of magic in the burned structures. Later, the Black Dragonflight would gather the remains and draw the earth up over the corpses. The Bronzes and Blues worked together, searching for evidence among the ruins. Meanwhile, the Reds used their cleansing fire to heal the landscape and coax new growth from the ashes. Together they would find the dragon or dragons responsible.
Tell me, Alexstrasza asked as Vyranoth landed beside her, where do the victims go when they flee this destruction? The mortals disappear, Vyranoth replied. Whether they die in the wilds or travel to neighboring settlements, I do not know. The Terrasec, on the other hand.
There was a beat of silence.
They go to Harrow's Deep, Alexstrasza said. Indeed, Vyranoth said. Can you blame them? Their families burned to death before their very eyes. Would you not also take up arms in your own defense?
Alexstrasza eyed Vyranoth.
No, I would first seek understanding. You cannot ask that of them, Alexstrasza,
Vyranoth said, her stare cold.
You cannot ask that of any of us.
Us? Alexstrasza asked, tossing her head as she turned to face Vyranoth.
Do you sympathize with the Incarnates, then? With Iridikron, who would burn the Broodlands, slaughter all my kind, raise this world to see his will done? I know your heart, my friend, Vyranoth said, but there are other matters I have not broached with you about your kind.
The words your kind were laced with so much bitterness they churned in Alexstrasza's stomach. Vyranoth had said too much, accidentally revealing a bias that she in all her wisdom had not realized she possessed. Even if she apologized, the wound to their friendship would remain.
Meaning what exactly? Alexstrasza asked through her teeth.
Ice slipped into Vyranoth's tone.
The primal dragons who brought this issue to my attention were driven from their territory by your flights. I thought their concerns might be a chance occurrence, but now to see your flights attacking defenseless mortals and Terrasec.
My flights are not attacking the settlements, Alexstrasza said to her friend.
Neltharion believes that these attacks are the workings of a single rogue dragon. Is that the truth? Vyranoth said. Or is it simply what you want to believe? Do you know what your flights do when your back is turned?
Not this, Alexstrasza replied with a firm shake of her head.
The dragonflight swore sacred oaths to protect life, not to take it without cause. You must understand, Vyranoth, this is not who we are. This is not what we do. Do not ask me to try to understand, Vyranoth said. You are changed, Alexstrasza. Everything about you, from your scent to your very essence, is unrecognizable. You have rejected what you are. I am what I have always been. I am Alexstrasza, she said, stepping forward. Ever have I fought to defend the helpless, And if you cannot see that now, perhaps it is because your heart has frozen. You are the one who keeps company with the cruel, the merciless. Alexstrasza spread her wings wide to gesture to the ruined lands around them. It would not surprise me to learn that the Incarnates had something to do with this destruction. You would put a talon at your enemy and blame them for the faults of your flights, Vyranoth said, eyeing Alexstrasza with distaste. And you would accuse me on hearsay, Alexstrasza said. You did not see these attacks for yourself. How do you know Iridikron isn't manipulating you as he has done to so many others? Because I can trust my kind, Vyranoth said in a half-roar, her words echoing off the cliffs around them. The sentiment seemed to surprise her as much as it did Alexstrasza. The ice dragon took a step back, stricken. Silence rushed in, hushing every voice in the valley. The Lifebinder loosed a deep sigh. After the horrors she had seen that day, she did not want it to end with harsh words and hurt feelings. She had been trying to salvage her friendship with Vyranoth of late, but every time she tried to cross the chasm between them, the gap only grew wider. Vyranoth, she began softly, but the ice dragon turned away, shaking her head. There is nothing more to be said between us. With that, Vyranoth took wing and disappeared into the growing dusk. Alexstrasza neither followed the ice dragon nor tried to call her back as she might have once done. Instead, she turned and beckoned to the other aspects. We have immediate need of ambassadors to the mortal races. Finish the work on the visages, or else I fear Nosdormu's predictions will come to pass.
Vyranoth returned north, relieved to take comfort in the chilly peaks of her mountain eyrie. As she neared it, the chill soothed the pain of her broken heart, patching the cracks with ice. The day had shown her that she and Alexstrasza had grown too far apart for their friendship to survive. Vyranoth had expected it to happen, but perhaps not so soon. She had no doubt that Alexstrasza wanted to protect this world, but to alter the natural order of things was imprudent at best and deadly at worst. Could Alexstrasza not see how the situation could spiral out of control? What if a significant force of ordered dragons turned against their aspects? What if an aspect turned their monstrous strength against their own kind as Galakron had? Vyranoth shuddered at the thought. Galakron, left unchecked, would have consumed them all. Vyranoth could not return to the Broodlands, not in good conscience, not now. Perhaps not ever. Gloomy, unnatural clouds collected over the frozen fangs. As Vyranoth approached her eyrie, she spotted Raszageth lounging at the cave's mouth, a pair of slain stags at her side. The clouds rumbled, heralding their mistress, but the storm did not break.
Your visit is not unwelcome, Storm-Eater,
Vyranoth said as she alighted on the icy ledge outside her home,
though I am in no mood for games.
No, I would imagine not, Raszageth replied, getting to her feet. I came north today to see if you would like to join me for a hunt, but found you missing. Little Nalakrona told me you had gone to the Broodlands. I figured you would be hungry after the long flight.
The Storm-Eater gestured to the two stags. Vyranoth cocked her head. As much as she liked Raszageth, the Storm-Eater did not often think of others' needs, not out of maliciousness or self-centeredness, but merely from a lack of awareness. Raszageth, like a storm itself, cared not for anything but her own fury. Perhaps it made this display of friendship all the more remarkable. Perhaps the Storm-Eater would be able to learn kindness, or at the very least something akin to it. The frustration melted from the wing muscles in Vyranoth's back.
Your thoughtfulness is appreciated, my friend. Today has been trying.
The aspects have forgotten what it means to be a dragon,
Raszageth said, taking one of the stags in her jaws. She tossed it at Vyranoth's feet. A little warmth still radiated from the creature.
Alexstrasza and her kin have been tamed by their keepers. You should have forsaken them long ago.
Perhaps, Vyranoth said.
Why should you still waste your time with them?
Raszageth asked, then tore into her prey. Flesh ripped, bones crunched, viscera spilled out onto the ice, still steaming. The scent hit Vyranoth's nostrils, heady enough to make her stomach growl.
I thought I could hold Alexstrasza to account for her actions,
Vyranoth said, turning her head to look south.
Instead, she turns the blame on the primal dragons for the wrongs of her flights.
Raszageth lifted her head, her snout smeared with gore. Bits of lightning snapped between her horns.
Whatever do you mean?
Her flights burned Terrasec and mortal settlements along the Broodlands borders, Vyranoth said. Yet Alexstrasza seeks to lay the blame at Iridikron's feet.
Raszageth's glowing silver eyes narrowed. Overhead thunder rumbled.
What would make her think we were to blame for such atrocities? Does she have any evidence? Any reason to believe Iridikron would strike at the Terrasect? They are his allies.
No, Vyranoth said, though she thought she heard a sliver of uncertainty in Razageth's voice, and that gave her pause. Razageth said,
If the aspects are already turning on their neighbors and chasing primal dragons from their territories, it won't be long before they come for us.
Alexstrasza does not want war with the Incarnate,
Vyranoth replied.
Perhaps not,
Razageth said,
but can you say the same of Neltharion, of Malagos? Do you believe they will leave our kind in peace? Because I do not.
You sound too much like Iridikron, my friend,
Vyranoth said.
After everything you have seen in the Broodlands, how can you disagree?
Razageth said, a low growl creeping into her voice.
Can you say with certainty that we have nothing to fear from the aspects and their hateful flights? Perhaps the fact that you haven't joined them yet is proof enough of your doubts.
Vyranoth blew out a breath.
Perhaps.
Or perhaps it is because I can trust Iridikron no more than I can trust Alexstrasza.
No more perhaps. Eat,
Razageth said, gesturing to the stag at Vyranoth's feet.
Then tell me what the aspects know of these attacks on the villages.
All right, so the plot there doesn't necessarily thicken, but progresses in the way that it's planned by Iridikron. And we have another episode in the pipe, 5x5. Thank you, as always, everyone, so much for watching, for listening, and I will see you all next time on Lore of Warcraft.